Once you have Visual Studio downloaded and you open it up, this is the screen that you'll see. You may have some different color scheme going, but I chose dark because I think it looks cool and it's easy to read. I like the contrast. But so I'll show you how to create a project, although you won't need to do this. All you'll have to do is go to Open, and I'll show you how to do that as well. But first, just for the sake of learning Visual Studio, the first thing you're going to want to do is create a project. For this project, everything will be console-based for two reasons. One, because we'll want to be able to run this in Linux as well as Windows. And since Linux doesn't really, you can get Linux to have a nice looking icons and windows and stuff like that, but it's harder to set up. And we shouldn't need to do that for the arena. Basically, all we really need is a console-based program. So how we're going to do this is you can pick Windows Desktop, but the thing we're going to choose is .NET Core, and the difference is Windows Desktop applications will only run on Windows, and .NET Core will run on both. And I mean, the Windows Desktop could possibly run on Linux as well. There's some porting you can do to be able to do that, but the idea is that .NET Core is created specifically so that it will run on Windows machines as well as like Linux machines as well as iOS machines. So that's what we're going to pick for this project. So I'm going to call it the Arena, and I'm going to add it to the Git path that we made earlier. So remember, I put it in Documents, Git, and then the Arena. And I'm just gonna put it right here. And boom, just like that, you have a working program that prints out Hello World. So just a quick tutorial about Visual Studio. How you run this program is you will go up to there's two different ways. If you're trying to debug it, then you will want to put a breakpoint somewhere in the program, which you do by clicking on this gray line, and it'll create this red point. And basically what a breakpoint does is when you run the code, the breakpoint will stop the execution of the code at that line, so you can check all the variables at that line and make sure that your program's doing what you want it to do. So the way you can run this program and let it hit the breakpoint is to go up here to the play button and just left click that. You should also have that it's in debug mode, otherwise all your variable values won't load. So you'll see that it starts running and then it stops on this line. And since we haven't declared any variables yet, nothing will show up except args, which is a parameter that's sent to the main function, and it has nothing in it because we didn't define any command line variables. But so then we can step down this one line by pressing F10 on the keyboard, and you'll see it'll go to the next line. Since there's no extra line, it just goes to the bracket, but that's what you want it to do. So that's how you run a program in Visual Studio. The other option, if you don't want to hit the breakpoint, is to view the control or the hotkeys Control F5, and that will just run the program in and show you the console. Awesome. Check out the picture just posted. That's where the solution file is going to be located. You just double click that solution file in your Git repo. It'll show up in your file explorer, and it'll open the solution just like this. So let me define what a solution is in Visual Studio. So you'll note that on the right hand corner you'll have the solution explorer, and if it's not there, you can find it again by going up to your toolbar and going to the View toolbar and then going to Solution Explorer, which is also the hotkeys Control-Alt-L will open it as well. And basically that'll just give you this toolbar on the right hand side, and the solution file contains all the projects for the code. So solution is this overarching organization sheet on this hierarchy, and the project is called the Arena, and you'll notice that it has C# next to it. The nice thing about Visual Studio is you can combine languages, so it is possible for a solution to have both C# files and C++ files and JavaScript files and HTML, and everything other language you want, and it should have the marking on it next to the project name, what language it's actually written in. So inside the project file, you'll have the C# files, which are the actual code. And when you double click on it, it'll bring up a tab that brings up the code that's in that file. So you can see the only file that we have in this code base right now is program.cs. And if I close the program.cs, I can reopen it just by double clicking on it. The dependencies are references, like it can be either DLLs, dynamic link libraries, or any other kind of thing that you want to include in your project. So you can kind of think of it as like IOStream in C++, where you're importing someone else's package so that you can use it in your own code. The nice thing about C# is most of the stuff like IOStream are already built into the language, so you don't have to worry about that. The only time you're going to use a dependency is if it's like an entire code base that you found on GitHub or something like that. So a little bit more about Visual Studio. Let's say I'm using some import, and this is what makes it better than C++. So if I want to read in from a file, for example, normally you have to pound include fstream or something in C++, right? So in C#, it's going to be called a stream reader. Okay, and so when you don't have it included what the library that it needs is, it'll have a red underline on it. So if I click it and I control period on it, it'll say, hey, you should use system.io. And so I click on that, and boom, it imports it just like that. So what's nice about it is you don't have to know what include files go to which objects. You just have to know the object itself. And then you can press Control period, those keys on the keyboard, and it'll tell you what import you need, which is just super awesome. And so the reason this is still red underlined, and what's nice about Visual Studio is I can go highlight over and it'll tell me what's wrong with it. Nice about Visual Studio is I can go highlight over and it'll tell me what's wrong with it. It's saying that StreamReader does not have a constructor that takes 0 arguments. You see, there's 10 different overloads for it, what you can send as a parameter for this function for it to work. One of them is a stream, which would just be like bytes. So a stream is just like, I have an array of bytes that gets filled in there. So I can have, and the stream reader would basically just read that stream of bytes if that's the overload you want to use. But since we're using a file, we can actually just put the file name here and it will read the file based off that. So if I just call it file.cpp, I guess that's kind of stupid, I should do txt. So if I read file.txt, that's what this stream reader is going to be reading from, it's just the file. So how to add a file. So if you right click on the project and you go down to add, you can then do new item and it'll bring up a dialog, and the dialog will let you put the new file name down here and click add, and then it would be added to your project. I'll do that real quick. So now you'll see in your Solution Explorer you have 2 files in there, and you have 2 tabs open, one for each class. And then if I want to reference the class in program.cs, I'll just do class1, my class equals new class1. And just like that, I'm referencing my other file, and it all compiles together real nicely. So you'll also notice that it turns yellow over here. It's yellow when you have new code that hasn't been built yet, and it's green when it's everything saved and it has been built. So you can see that if I hit build, it says the build succeeded. We don't have any weird code or anything like that, and that'll wrap up this tutorial video.